Welcome to the Unironic Masterpiece Fanfic Theater. This is a collaborative project between us three, who will introduce ourselves in a moment, to shine a spotlight on fanfiction which is actually good. My name's Steven.
I am Nick.
And I'm Jesse.
And the reason we're called the Unironic Masterpiece Fanfic Theater is because there's already a couple of other bits that already exist called the Masterpiece Fanfic Theater that shine a light on more notorious works, like My Immortal and anything like that.
Yeah, we want to distinguish ourselves, of course.
So we want to actually shine a light on things that actually are worth talking about. So Nick and I actually have a pretty in-depth history with fanfiction. Jesse does not. But Nick and I will just start things off. My fanfiction forays actually began with Mega Man. This is the first time these two are hearing this.
Yeah.
So, my first story, I actually remember it very well, was like a crack Mega Man Christmas special, like a Mega Man X thing. And I enjoyed it. And then I gradually moved into other stuff, because at first I just thought that, like, good fan fiction didn't exist and it could just be humor. And then from there I went into, like, other things. There's an author who I found then called Zvari. It starts with a Y. But I still follow her today, and her stuff was what convinced me that actual good fan fiction exists.
And
so
then,
moving on to you.
Yeah, sometime, was it like late middle school, early high school?
It was early high school.
Early high school. I started hanging out with Steven again after moving back into state. And he would send me links to, weird stories on fanfiction.net that I hadn't read before, which is, all of them. And at one point he finally convinced me to read one. It was Teen Titans and the Lost Boy, which is a Ranma 1/2 and 2005 Teen Titans crossover. After that, I dove real hard into Ranma. Just the manga, the anime. There's a dog scratching at the door. And just sort of ever since been reading mostly dead fanfiction. Things that are good, genuinely good, but as I'm sure many of you are aware, never will and have no intention of being finished.
And then we have Jesse.
In middle school, I read a few Jack and Daxter fan fictions that were always really good, and then ended after like one or two chapters, so
Yeah.
they never went anywhere. They barely even started. So that's basically it.
That's an accurate representation of most people's experience with fanfiction.
Yeah.
Hey, this is really good, and it's over. But it's not. Aww.
So what we want to do here today is we want to actually look at something worth looking at. So we have selected a single, just a one-shot fanfic piece. Just solid start, solid ending. And we've decided to look at it critically. And the way that we've formatted this, Nick and I have a rubric, which I will introduce in just a moment. And we have already read through the story prior to this and given our detailed breakdowns. Nick's showing some air quotes there.
And it should be noted that neither of us are actual critics. Don't claim to be critics. We're just people who decided to take a critical look at these stories.
We are going to do a lot of visual humor, though.
Oh, yeah. No. Good dab, Jesse. Continue.
So, the way that we're going to look at this, Nick and I have already made our reviews. This is a story that we've both already read well ahead of time and just written down our criticism. Jesse was given the story this morning, which he has read, and he is going to give his first impressions, and we will grill him like a witness at the stand, and we'll see what comes of it. So, the first thing we're actually going to introduce before we even get to the story is the highly subjective grading criteria that has been birthed from my mind crevice to...
You can pull it out of your brain hole.
Yeah. But this criteria, it's based on 5 different segments plus 1 bonus segment. And those 5 segments are first, the premise of the story itself. What is the premise that we are looking at? What is happening in this story? Is it a good idea? Just looking at it as a jumping off point. And that will constitute 10 of the 100 points. The next thing is source consistency. Because since this is fan fiction, you're working off of something that already exists. So that consistency with that source material is going to be kind of important. And there can be divergence. It's just a matter of diverging tastefully and still also being recognizable as your original source. The next thing we have is just, and that takes up 15 points of the 100, by the way. Next, we've got the plot and the characters itself. This is for two reasons. And, Nick's just going to butcher my words because I've already butchered them.
Yeah.
So we're going to fix this in post.
Oh, boy.
There are two things we've put together in this category, plot and characters, and we put them together because they kind of both make up the driving force of a story. With fan fiction, you're either going for something that's story-driven or character-driven, because you're either trying to tell a new story with characters in a world that you already like, or you're trying to develop characters that you already like in a way that they haven't been explored before, or further in a way that they already have, you just like it.
Now, as an addendum, there are many stories out there that are both story and character driven, and while those are much less common than those that are driven by one or the other, they should still be treated as such.
Right. This is to us what makes up most of the content in what actually is the story, and that's why this takes up the bulk of the points in our rubric. That's up to 40 points. And as a little caveat here, if we particularly like something that might be original to the story itself, I do reserve the right to award bonus points for original elements.
Yep.
The next two things, writing quality. This should go without saying.
Yeah.
And you don't need to be like Charles Dickens to get a good score here. This makes up 25 points, and you don't need to be amazing. You just need to be intelligent. Have good sentence structure, diverse vocabulary, just make something that reads well. And the last thing is cleanliness. Anybody who has read fan fiction, I would say before the year 2000, would know exactly what I'm talking about here. Formatting is always interesting online. I've actually been speaking with my wife about reading fan fiction on Tumblr, which she laments all the time because the formatting is awful.
Now, I will say, I don't use it as much as I probably should, but AO3, an archive of our own, very, very good at maintaining formatting, especially when compared to something like fanfiction.net or
Absolutely.
Tumblr. While I think that fanfiction.net, or just FF, I guess, has a better sort of, what would you say, like a user interface on the back end when you're uploading things.
Right.
AO3 preserves what you put into it much better than FF does.
And what it comes down to is kind of looking at the format you're posting in and knowing what the rules you're playing with are.
Right, and if you know that going in, it's a lot easier to keep it formatted properly. But again, they change the rules a lot.
And fanfiction.net has way too many rules.
Oh yeah, way too many. Nope.
So even with that, it's just a matter of make your paragraphs, make your lines distinguishable, and as long as your story looks like, text on a page that can be navigated like a human person, you can get your full 10 points on this.
And with writing quality and cleanliness, there's also the idea that not everybody is it's fan fiction, right? They're not professional authors most of the time. So you don't always have an editor ready on staff to go to make sure everything is perfect, everything is clean. So there should be an element of, well, are they editing this themselves, or did they just throw it out there in the ether and are taking criticism?
It's a matter of suffering.
Yes.
It is a matter of how much did I suffer while reading this story, and was the suffering worth it?
Yeah.
And the last thing, this is that bonus category that will not be utilized today. But this is just for myself and Nicholas, who have stuck along with many, many painfully long works. But we call this the Completeness Bonus. Any work that has exceeded 50,000 words and is either complete or shows recent signs of not being dead automatically receives a 5-point bonus.
Rest in peace, stories of Black Dragon.
Oh, Black Dragon.
Anyway.
You gave us so much. So now, on to the story. Nick, would you like to introduce the story?
Yeah. So today we are going to be looking at President for a Day, which is a Dragon Ball Z one-shot by an author called Darke Angelus, user on fanfiction.net. The copyright on the story in the text itself is 2009. It's about 8,000 words or so it's a pretty good little introduction to the format we're going to be looking at. Jesse, you look like you got something to say.
I've been reading his name as Drake the whole time.
No.
It's Darke, alright? Just switch the R and the A.
Oh,
Sorry.
and so I say let's just go ahead and dive right into things.
Let's
without even
just
going
jump right into it.
Without even doing a synopsis, let's ask Jesse, what did you think of President for a Day?
It's so jarring every time Vegeta swears, and I don't know why. Because it seems like something he would do, but it's from, like, a T-rated, or whatever, how you rate shows, not R-rated.
You know, that's something interesting.
Yeah.
That's something that I think you and I, Nick, have been in the game for so long that it just doesn't catch us off guard anymore.
Well, especially in the Dragon Ball Z stuff, because Vegeta in, like, the Japanese and in all the games, he curses
anime.
like a fucking sailor
No,
sometimes.
it's like, even reading it, like,
but he doesn't curse that hard.
I totally expect him to, and it still throws me, like, it seems completely in character for him.
Right.
There's no reason for it to throw me, but it's still just weird.
Do you hear him in the voice of Christopher Sabat?
Yes,
Do you
100%.
do you just hear him going, "Yes, boys, Mondo cool"?
Oh, no. I hear Team 4-Star Vegeta. That's all I ever hear anymore.
So, what did you think of the actual content of the story? Tell us what this story is about, Jesse.
It's about Vegeta. Alright, so Bulma, her last name is Briefs, which I never knew, because I never pay attention to anything I watch or read. She got sick from probably eating something. They never explain it. But
They don't.
she's just throwing up really bad. And
It's
she's
that
like, I gotta go to
alien
work.
sperm.
I have to make a great deal with not General Dynamics called Quantum Dynamics.
Not Microsoft.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally General Dynamics.
It's, Gil Bates.
Quantic Dream. It's a
I
failing
do
company.
not need to deal with any of this. I am
David
Cage.
You cannot comprehend the amount of polygons we bring to the table.
into this company. Anyway.
Ellen Page. Alright. So Vegeta's like, don't worry, babe. I'll take over being president for a
Now,
day.
all I can imagine is Vegeta saying, "You've never dealt with a company with as many polygons as this."
Oh, and Bra's alive in this version.
Yeah, so context wise, this takes place like late GT, sort of after GT, I guess.
Trunks is 19, Bra's 4.
Yes. Yep.
I would say this is... I don't even know if GT happens in this continuity.
Or has happened yet.
We can hope it happened.
Yeah,
the
it's
best
everyone's
Star Wars.
favorite.
Omega Shenron.
It's my favorite Star Trek.
There was a 4-star dragon that pulled out of Omega Shenron and helped the good guys. No, such a great story. One of them was born because someone wished for underwear.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball.
They made 7 wishes on the Dragon Balls, so now there's 7 Eagle Dragons.
Back when Dragon Ball was a lot less Z and a lot less Super.
So what did you think of the, I guess the basic premise of this story?
I really liked it. It's nice to see Vegeta do not killing things.
Domestic stuff?
Yeah.
I think that what gets me about this story is it's again because it's kind of like plot character. The big thing here is just watching Vegeta. He is the star of the show here.
See, I agree with you, but I disagree with the most entertaining thing to me is not Vegeta himself. It's everyone around him.
By the way, we're going to put the story, a link to it in the description of wherever this gets posted.
Yeah, wherever this is posted, probably YouTube.
Highly recommend you read the story first.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely recommend reading this. We'll add that in future releases. Read the story before listening to this.
Well, we'll put it in the intro.
Yeah.
But, say again, Nick, the real stars.
Oh yeah, the real stars here are the characters around Vegeta, right? I mean, you got Trunks in the building, you got the secretary, and obviously the 3 best are the 3 stooges from the other company. What was it? Gil Bates. I forget the other 2's names.
That's it.
That one's just so memorable.
It's so memorable. It's just on the nose. Oh, are we going through the rubric sort of one at a time, or are we just gonna...
I think we'll go through the rubric at the end.
Okay.
For now, let's just chat it up.
Phil Forbes, Martin class.
That's it.
Forbes.
I don't know. It's one of those sort of typical straight man meets the weird world types, right? So you got these characters who are living in this fantastic world, but they're normal human beings, right? They're not used to dealing with people who have superpowers or ridiculous over the top abilities.
Not used to Vegeta's isekai.
So, I mean, they come in, they start talking behind his back when they think he can't hear him, and then he obviously can because he's, a super alien. It's just they react as you would expect humans in a business setting to react to, a superpowered alien prince.
I think what I enjoy about that whole story, like you said, it's domestic Vegeta. It's him doing things that you would not expect Vegeta to be doing, because the whole premise of the story, like the title says, President for a Day, Vegeta has gone to be the president of Capsule Corporation for a day, and you just get to watch him sort of rule the world.
Yeah.
In a way that you don't typically see, because Vegeta shows that he can be quite diplomatic in a horrifying way.
Well, and that's another thing that's explored a lot in fan fiction that you don't really see in the show, right? Because in the show, he's a warrior, he's there to fight, he's there to win, he's there to get more powerful. But a lot of fanfic authors like to say, what was he like when he was working for Frieza, not blowing things up? Well, he was a prince, right? He was supposed to rule his planet one day, his planet himself.
And now all of his friends are dead.
Well, yes, and so he's dead.
Everyone I know is dead.
But a lot of authors like to write Vegeta as this cunning, brilliant character who is incredibly knowledgeable in these social situations, and I like that. But what throws me off is at one point, Darke Angelus mentions like a lot of the things in the Capsule Corp R&D were created by Vegeta because he's this super genius.
I wanted to bring that up because I was thinking about it, and the only thing I can come up with is because he was raised as the Sand Prince, he knows basic sand technology.
Which so even that is so far advanced.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, is it like that he's a genius, or that he knows how to make an alien toothbrush?
Yeah,
we're so impressed by.
Those escape pods that he and Nappa always fly in. He just knows how to generally run maintenance on him, no matter what planet he's on. So he's just like, hey, this is how this works, and he gets credit for it.
That'd be like if you sent me or Jesse back 700 years with a battery and some copper wire. We know how to wire up something to make it glow off the energy coming from the battery, right? That would seem like magic.
Be gods.
Yeah, but to us, that's something dumb and simple with no real use.
What really comes down to the best parts of this for me are one, Vegeta treating.
You want to open the door and let the dog in, Jesse? She's been crying.
Come on, Jojo.
She's too fucking cute. Both dogs. Oh no, they're gonna wag around and you can hear them on the mic. Oh no, dogs! What a shame.
Doggos.
We'll just choke them out.
No.
Yeah. That's not a good.
Anyway,
but what really comes down to the best moments is Vegeta interacting with his family.
Yes.
With these strangers who are, like Nick said, they're the Three Stooges. They're idiots who think that they're big fish in a small pond.
Oh yeah.
Wait, we should say Gil Bates is basically Bill Gates, obviously,
right.
the head of the company. Then you got Phil Forbes, who just does background checks, I think, or that's someone else. I can't remember if there was three.
Klaus?
No, Klaus is the big muscle dude.
And then there was the guy who was doing the background checks you already mentioned. So I don't know if we've touched on this yet.
I didn't even bother to remember their names.
No, you remember Gil, and then there's big muscle guy, background
and then skinny guy
guy
who ends up getting hired by Vegeta.
Yeah, I remember Gil Bates because that's the most egregious one.
Again, we should mention that the plot of the story here, I don't know if we've brought this up yet, is Vegeta taking over for Bulma to run a business deal to buy a smaller company, and this smaller company's been cooking their books to make it look like they're much more profitable than they are. I know, Jesse, you touched on that at the beginning. I just wanted to
I didn't
bring
get
that
to
up again.
Yeah.
We'll add a description in post.
Yes, we will do all this. No, I don't think.
Tell you all
and you touched on Vegeta and his family, and I think that's the highlight of the story, right? That's the best motivating part of Vegeta in this entire sort of self-contained universe. And my personal favorite is Bulma, right? Bulma is so 100% in character for the limited time that she's I guess screen time that she has, that it's perfect. I would like to have seen a little more, but again, the premise of the story being that she's not there, so.
I like that they have a swear jar.
Yeah, I do too.
Oh, jeez.
I like that they have a swear jar.
Put 20 zenny in there.
Putting Dragon Ball Z money in.
That was another thing, is as soon as the swear jar comes out, it talks about Vegeta pulling out a wallet. And it's just he has a wallet now.
Well, yeah, you gotta remember, Vegeta takes his daughter shopping with his mustache after he gets his haircut.
Yeah, he does.
Mustache.
Honestly, the hardest part of this whole thing was trying to picture Vegeta in a suit. I couldn't do it. Like, you could just put a suit here, Vegeta, and, like, try to overlay this.
It just doesn't work?
It really doesn't. I can't picture Vegeta in a suit. It's not right.
The thing that really gets me, because I've said this to Nick, I know. I don't think I've said it to Jesse, but what it comes down to, because at the very end of the story, because Muscles McGee was brought into the meeting by...
To threaten Bulma, basically.
Yes, to threaten Bulma, to try to intimidate her into a deal, which is a stupid thing to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But, and for me it highlights how much of... How huge of idiots those guys are.
Jojo,
but
hey, stop.
After this whole thing goes through, because Vegeta is pissed that they even entertained the thought of bringing someone in to threaten his wife.
Like, hey, if I wasn't here, they would be actively threatening my wife.
So he...
My wife.
After the fact, he goes and quietly
beats the ever-loving shit out of him?
Murders him in his hotel room.
And the way that I phrased that to Nick, everybody has a love language, but Vegeta's love language is murder.
It's a very broad language. You can communicate a lot of emotions through murder.
But as funny as that sounds, I think it illustrates his character very well.
Yeah.
In a way that is consistent with who he is in the show and the comics and whatever medium you like him in.
I mean, yeah, throughout the entire series, what if he doesn't like something? What does he do? He blows it up.
Because at the end of the day, Vegeta is a horrible person.
Oh, absolutely. He's a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad man.
He's a horrible person who would do anything for his family. Because that's the culmination of his arc at the end of at the end of his character development in the saga.
Without a doubt, Vegeta has the most growth as a character, except maybe Gohan in the entire series. Yeah. Gohan doesn't really grow.
He does to a point.
He grows. He doesn't, because he starts out as a good person. He just becomes a more good or better person.
Gets more lame.
Yeah.
He turns into a responsible adult, unlike his father.
A responsible adult who runs around in tights with his wife, also running around in tights saving people.
Goku from episode 1 of Dragon Ball to the final episode of Dragon Ball Super is the same
person. Exact person.
He has not changed at all.
Nope.
He's just a child in a bigger body.
Yeah.
It's amazing to have that little amount of character development.
But bringing it back to the story, it really shows Vegeta's character in a way that, shows that he's a horrible person, but at the same time, there's something that you can't help but like about the way he chooses to express his horrible impulses.
And I think it says a lot about that Vegeta is a lot of people's favorite character in that show, right?
Yeah.
Because, people maybe not able to relate to the mass murdering, but they are able to relate to, having a shitty past and finding people around you that can help you move on from that. And that is a big sort of part of Vegeta's growth as a character, and that's a lot of what we see in this story.
Mm-hmm. And I think what this story brings to the table that the show doesn't is just sort of showing a culmination of that.
Yep.
Because in the show we get to see Vegeta reach the end of his character arc. But
the biggest part of that is in Super, right?
Yes. In the new movie,
I haven't seen it yet.
The less new movie than I am alluding to.
Okay.
Battle of the Gods.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about.
When Beerus,
he basically just throws Bulma to the side, and then Vegeta goes fucking crazy.
And Vegeta loses it.
Which is, the second best scene in that movie. I love that movie. I have it on Blu-ray.
It's a great part.
Because here's something else I'll say. Because Dragon Ball Super kind of turns Vegeta into... how do I put this? He's sort of like... If Tim Allen was...
Okay, where are you going with this?
A destroyer of worlds. But do you
Neighbor, do you understand what he's saying here?
I'm thinking about it.
His edge has been sort of watered down.
You say they nerfed Vegeta?
He's become kind of a less tyrannical. I
Remove
guess.
Vegeta's genocidal dialogue options in patch 1.7.
He's more of a family man now.
Yeah.
And he seems like the kind of person who would have a sitcom, and he'd always be like really angry at his neighbors.
Oh,
and Bulma would be like, "You can't kill the neighbors, honey.
Oh.
Watch me!"
So Goku is Ned Flanders.
But that's kind of what I mean. Super kind of waters that down. Vegeta in Dragon Ball Super doesn't feel like the same character that blew himself up at the end of Dragon Ball Z.
But at the same time, he kind of does.
Like, I can see the progression, but it feels like a lot happened that we didn't get to
despite only being like a 2-year time skip.
And I like that in this story, the Vegeta we see here is a lot more recognizable compared to who he was in Dragon Ball Z, because he's the same person who, like, genocided a lot.
Genocided, that's a
He
verb.
blew up an insect alien planet
You're right.
before he got to Earth.
That's Xenocide.
Fair.
But,
it's only Xenocide because they're different.
Vegeta has done a lot of horrible stuff.
Yeah.
And Dragon Ball, not just Dragon Ball Super, but just Dragon Ball in general, kind of forgets that sometime. And that's kind of because it's a shonen story.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of the beauty of fan fiction, in my opinion. You can break out of the tropes that you're stuck in.
Right.
So Vegeta doesn't just need to be like a standard rival character.
It lets you explore the character outside of the context that he's allowed to be in the show.
Right, because he is still like that horrible person. It's kind of like how in Naruto they let Sasuke get away with so much garbage. If Naruto was not a shonen series, Sasuke would not be allowed to get away with half as much of the garbage that he got away with.
Right.
But because he's the shonen rival anti-hero, the genre states he has to get away with it because he has to come back and like have a final duel and become friends with the main character.
So here's something that kind of bugs me about DB Fix in general, right?
Jesse, you look like you want to say something.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about the time Sasuke cut off Akage's arm, who's a really important person, and then I was like, wait, did Vegeta kill anyone? Because I'm pretty sure Nappa just killed them all.
Vegeta killed a lot of people.
Yeah, but I mean any of the main crew.
Yeah, but nobody we like.
Because it's like, did he kill Yamcha or was that Nappa?
That was a Cyberman.
Or, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
still. Yeah, and Yamcha
you killed me and
back.
took my girlfriend.
Like, it's not like that one dude that never comes back, even though I swear Goku comes back like 5 times throughout the series. Pachirisu.
Pachirisu.
Yeah, I think it is 5 times. I think you're right.
But, you were saying?
So, we're talking about, like, Vegeta being characterized slightly differently. Something that bugs me a lot about a lot of Dragon Ball fics is that we get this, like, sort of older, mellowed out Vegeta. And I don't think that's without merit. I think that, you know, people do mellow with age. But, I mean, from the beginning of DBZ to Super, it's like 25 years, right? Mm-hmm. Vegeta, well, like 20 years. Vegeta doesn't really mellow at all. He has no goddamn chill the whole time. So even skipping ahead 10, 15 more years, it's always kind of, it never sits quite right with me that he's not flipping his shit at every possible second. Because that's part of what Vegeta does. He has the shortest fuse. It's shorter than he is. Right?
Throughout the entire second major saga of the story, they're all kind of still wondering whether or not Vegeta's going to turn on them and start murdering people.
And then the one time he's forced to turn on them and start murdering people indiscriminately, he says, fuck you, and blows himself up.
To be fair, he kind of did that willingly.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying.
That was Boo, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was Majin Vegeta.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've seen that.
Ah, Majin.
Also, Vegeta says the word fugly.
Oh, yeah.
What's up with that?
I was hoping
you know, I like to think I've had canonized that as a habit from, like, he wants to he wants to say a curse word, but reflexively.
Oh, because of the swear jar?
The swear jar.
My daughter has trained me to use strange combinations of words.
Well, fugly is an actual insult.
I know it is.
So my only thought was like, because it's a callback. He's calling the big dude fugly because at one point he heard him he overheard the big guy being like, "Oh, I could totally take that guy. He barely reaches my nose."
Right.
And my only thought was I scrolled back up and wondered if the big guy.
Didn't, though.
No, he didn't. But I think that may have
is a
been
reference to
intention.
his appearance. Yeah. And they do a lot of callbacks like that because Vegeta can hear everything they're saying the entire time, especially when they don't think he can. Like when they're sitting in that limo across the street from the building, and he just sort of floats down in front of them and just crosses his arms and stands there staring. He's listening to them. So I mean, things like that. Again, going back to the superpowered characters versus, and I'm going to keep touching on that because that's my favorite aspect of this story. It's what keeps the story feeling more, ironically enough, real to me. Because the character reactions are, oh yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's move into the actual grading.
Okay.
So the way we're going to format this is we're going to go category by category. And we're actually going to, again, sort of reintroduce the category lightly. And then we're going to ask Jesse to score it. And then Nick and I will give our scores, and we'll alternate between whose. Nick, do you need your scoring criteria?
No, I just want to write down Jesse's score.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll just use this marker. We're good.
There's a pencil over there.
I got this. Yeah, okay, you can give me the pencil. Thanks, Jesse!
So, number one, we're going to be looking at the premise. Again, the what if of the story. What is happening here? Jesse, there are 10 points that can be awarded for this part. What would you score the premise and give your justification to?
So the premise is basically just the overall what's happening, right?
Yes, It is the idea of the story. Like, what would the summary be?
Definitely not stalling here.
Jesse's summoning his inner communist.
It's fun. Like, I don't know, 10. Why not? Like,
it's all right.
There's nothing I really disagree with. Yeah.
And
go for it.
So I concur with Jesse as far as that's concerned. To me, the premise, basically, Bulma gets sick and Vegeta decides to play boss for a day. It's cut and dry, it's believable, and I find it to be an interesting hook. So I give it a 10.
So I guess I kind of took a different approach to this than you guys did. So I agree. I think it's a believable premise, especially given the characters presented. It doesn't really seem, too wild. It seems like something that you could easily see happening within the series itself. But instead of going straight for a 10, I kind of stuck with an average acceptable, like 7.5. So that's where I am.
All right, where are those other 2.5 points? What are they wanting? What are they desiring?
Absolutely fucking wowing me, man.
Okay.
Like I felt, yes, this is good. I'm okay with this. Let's see where this goes. To get a 10 from me, I think it would have to. Oh, okay, yeah, no, I have to read this. You know what I mean?
Okay, I see where you're coming from.
And again, this is a super subjective grading criteria.
So the next thing we're looking at is consistency with the source. How consistent are we with Dragon Ball Z?
How consistent is Dragon Ball Z with Dragon Ball Z?
That's a good question, but for the moment, we're just going to stick with, again, our subjective views of how we interpret the source material, and how we feel this is not necessarily consistent with, but faithful.
Okay, that's a good assessment.
The source material of Dragon Ball Z. Jesse, your thoughts?
How many points
15
is this?
points.
50. Okay, so I like we didn't really talk about it, but Trunks is also in this a lot, and they actually portray him really well at being constantly nervous about his dad and hating his weird desk job that his mom forced him into. Not even a desk job; he just delivers mail.
He's the mail boy.
The mail boy.
But so I really like that. I think my only problem is like having a daughter might mellow out Vegeta more than anything else has in his life. But still, I still feel like Vegeta might just throw a random ki blast out a window to intimidate people.
Yeah.
I like this Vegeta much more. They keep talking about how smart and diplomatic he is, and he never showed that, like, at all. He just showed himself doing push-ups and, like, 1,000 gravity. So, everything else is great. Vegeta's just a little off, so I'd say 12. Let's go 13.
I actually agree pretty much word for word with what you said, Jesse. I also gave it a 12. For the same, I mean, you gave it a 13. I gave it a 12 for the same reasons.
And I'm actually on a 12-2 for this. Tonally, I had a few problems. The story is... I feel like it's going for a serious, sort of darkly humorous tone a lot of the time. And I like that as far as the story goes.
Mm-hmm.
As far as like what Dragon Ball Z is, it's a little different from that.
Yeah.
But I can still live with that. I still enjoy that. But there were some particular details that I find distracting. The executive names in particularly give me a Cloud, Aerith, and Bob feel.
They take you out of the story a little bit.
And the other thing that made me raise my eyebrows was a line where they state that their boss hightailed it to Mexico.
Yeah.
To which I go, wait a minute.
There's a lot of that. Again, in Dragon Ball Fix, they try and mash, like, real-world places with a world that has East City, West City, Dogmare. Like, you know, it's... Well, Dog King. My bad. This is a monarchy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because there's other things, like they bring up the... what do they freaking call them? Like... They don't go as far to call them the Z Fighters thing.
No, like the Earth Defense
Force.
That's it.
Which was never a canon thing. That's a fanon thing.
I forgot to bring that up.
I thought it was dumb.
They also say that the Earth Defense Force all look like freaks, and sure, you got Piccolo and Tien, but then there's Yamcha and
and then you got
Yamcha.
Then you got a couple of fucking blonde guys. Like... I don't know.
Those two, like three of them look very
and
human.
at that point, Yamcha, like, supposedly is a well-known professional baseball player. It's like, oh, that freak.
Yeah.
But does Yamcha even show up at that stuff anymore?
He showed up at the Cell Games, which is they always talk about.
He was showed up at the Cell Games.
He showed up at the Cell Games to do nothing. So, the next thing, because we've gone ahead and got that down. Nick wrote down Jesse's score.
Right. Writing quality. Jesse.
Next is the beef.
How do you feel? Oh, plot and character. Wait, I skipped one, didn't I?
Because, we just did...
we
just did source consistency, which Jesse gave a 13. Next is plot and characters for 40 points. How did you feel about the meat of this story? The plot, where the characters went?
I have no complaints. It was all fine. Like,
this is out of 40.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I feel 12 or 13. No.
You know, like a 6.
A solid 5.
Yeah, right? Like, because I don't know if I can say the Vegeta thing again, because the character still seems a bit off.
You can, because that falls solidly within plot and characters. Because that could influence his behavior and the way that he acts through the story.
I love that our podcast will have some nice, solid butt wagging from the dog.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of that.
But, like, other than Vegeta, everyone else seemed in character. You know, the business guys were weird business guys. Bulma was throwing up. Bra didn't really do anything. Trunks was nervous. Everyone else was nervous.
I mean, you'd be nervous around Vegeta.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Put a number on it.
Yeah, no, I'm just, I guess, 35.
Okay, that's solid.
Because it's really just me taking off points for Vegeta.
I gave it a 38, and I kind of had the opposite view. Because I felt characterization was spot on for Vegeta and Bulma. The thing that got me, because I find Vegeta's character as a mass murderer who also happens to love his family is great. Where it falters for me is the antagonists, who are a bit dull, the generic suits with egregious names.
Mm-hmm.
And then Trunks, I personally prefer as a dork.
Instead of like the playboy sort of type that they...
Right.
Oh,
and
yeah.
honestly, full disclosure, I do think the playboy thing they're going for is probably more consistent with a Trunks who grew up in Capsule
Corp instead
with
of
Goten.
in the ruins of Capsule Corp.
And I personally prefer the dorky Trunks. Not necessarily future Trunks, but GT Trunks, who just exists to, like, spew exposition.
I mean, that's basically what he does. He walks around with a squeaky mail cart and just looks nervously at everyone the whole time and tries to calm people down. Other than that one offhand line where he had sex on a couch in his mom's office.
Think of all the Quarter Saiyan babies that'll be running around.
Ooh.
No.
But,
No, that means they're 3/4 human. They're 3/4 the most powerful species in the galaxy, but it's useless without any Saiyan in it. Wait, what?
hey,
Hold on.
the big thing to me was
This is the best Star Wars.
the star of the show, Vegeta, was spot on for me. Which is why I gave it a 38 out of 40.
Just a few points for those nagging little
2
things.
points for minor details that... Because the reason I only took 2 points was, 1, they're minor details, and 2, especially with the Trunks thing, that's highly subjective specifically to me.
Bring it in a little closer to the mic. It's not picking you up quite so well.
But for the Trunks thing, that's like largely my preference.
Right.
Which is why I'm not going to take a lot off for that, because I can still recognize that that's good stuff.
So, I liked Trunks in this. I liked, again, it all comes back to that mellowed out, calm, collected, in control of everything Vegeta, which is a thing that we really don't see a lot of in the series. He's always freaking out because he's not in control. And while I like the way that he acts, I don't like the way that he acts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. Because Vegeta will act like this for about 15 seconds while he's like, I'm about to kill you. And
then
then he'll kill someone. For him to do this for like 4 hours straight.
Yeah. It seems like he dragged on way too long beyond where the actual character would normally snap.
And I'll argue with that, if only because I felt like he did what would be believable, which was make it through the situation that his wife expects him to make it through.
Yeah.
And then at the end, he does snap. Because it's very... He knows that it's not okay that he goes to kill class.
I know. I don't... It doesn't quite sit right with me, you know? The way that Vegeta's written doesn't feel... It feels like Vegeta, but it doesn't feel like the right Vegeta.
I can see that.
So I actually gave it a 30 out of 40. I liked it. I really did. It's just that Vegeta was such an important part of it, and it didn't vibe with me quite well enough. You know?
Right.
All right, now we move on to writing quality, because we actually did plot and characters this time. Jesse!
How many points is this?
This is 25. But largely what we're looking at here isn't that it's like the greatest written thing ever.
Right.
Just that the writing quality was not distracting as you read it.
Actually, one thing I really liked about this, because of the few other fan fictions I've read, of like, it's sort of like, blank says this, blank says this, blank says... That happens like 3 times in this whole thing. Like, it's very fluid about who's talking without ever actually saying who's saying it.
It felt organic and easy to follow.
Yeah. It was really, like, yeah. So, I'm going to just say 25, because it was really easy for me to read. Nice paragraphs. You know who's talking, even without them throwing it in your face, and even shows, like, how they're telling it.
I think that's a pretty good diagnosis. I agree with that, if only because I like not having to strain myself to read something, while at the same time being able to understand what's happening. And it doesn't boil down to just he said, she said, he said, she said, he said, she said.
It's not shot, reverse shot, shot, reverse
Right.
shot, shot, reverse shot.
It diversifies the way things go through. Person X doesn't just say something. They express themselves, and they make sure to keep finding new ways to put that through, so it doesn't get stale. So since that didn't distract me, I gave it a perfect score.
So, man, I really do sound like the bad guy here. Let me start off. This was very well written. It had very little extra fluff or padding. It was to the point, very descriptive, and I really don't have much to criticize. But what I do, it's all personal preference and sentence structures. It's there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that the way that I read it in my brain, it doesn't always click right. And I've got a few examples here, but it kind of doesn't really matter enough. Some of them, they just feel odd, you know, the way that they're presented. Plus, there's a lot of colons. There are 5 separate uses of colons in the story. And that...
It's an important organ.
It's an important... You're right. So, like, all of these things could be solved by having a professional editor, but as we talked about before, nobody has that kind of money. I gave it an 18 out of 25 because I really liked it. I thought it was great.
For a second, I was gonna like reel at that, but then I remembered it was out of 25, not out of 40.
Yeah, it's again, this is subjective grading criteria. Objectively, it would probably score higher, but because I'm the one reading it, I took it down to an 18 because there were a few things in there that I had to just stop and look at and try and make sense of in my head.
Right. And the last thing, cleanliness. Did this hurt to read?
Not at all. I'd have to give that perfect score because, I feel like I'm definitely not qualified to judge people's writing, but it
No,
seemed
but
fine.
you are the level of qualified that the general audience of this sort of thing would be.
I don't know. The internet said I had the vocabulary of a 14-year-old.
That's fine.
You
It's
know,
fan fiction.
let's put it this way. This should be the easiest category to get a perfect
Oh,
score.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's just a matter of knowing where you're uploading the story and getting it in a way that doesn't kill your reader when they're trying to read it. Some people will put like random tabs because of the way
They format it on Word or Google Docs.
they decided to just press space until it formed a new line and then pressed tab for a paragraph instead of pressing
Enter or return or...
Some people wrote it as a forum post and then just copied and pasted it.
Tumblr.
But as far as this goes, and this is specific to the version we read on fanfiction.net on Darke Angelus' actual profile.
I'm actually not sure. Does this exist on AO3 or...
It might.
It very well
might.
might.
To check.
Yeah.
But the version that we're linking to, we were all very happy with the formatting. It sounds like, I take it we all gave that a perfect score.
I could not, in good conscience, give this a perfect score given what I scored it on writing quality.
You're stealing my thunder, Nick.
Because it wouldn't make sense for me to say, yeah, it was great. I just had a few issues with the way I was reading it. It broke up the flow occasionally. Perfect score, 10 out of 10. I gave it a 9. If only because of those small issues I had with what I was reading.
Right. And again, the reason I separated those when I made this rubric was because I find writing quality and the writing quality and quality of life I find to be two different things. And for me, writing quality is based on the actual words and the verbiage and where a new paragraph is intended to start. For me, formatting and quality of life is about visually where the paragraph actually ends up starting and where the line breaks are made and whether or not the story was readable.
It's the cleanliness category is really all about your own sanity.
If periods ended up carrying over to the beginning of the
the next
line
paragraph of the next line,
Oh my god, I have seen things. I have been places that no man should ever go to.
Places of grammatical incorrectness.
I just know I read one that is just
Time to
one
die.
run-on sentence.
Oh my god, those are the worst.
Like no punctuation of any kind except for quotation marks. It's not really a punctuation, but and then it's just like no
formatting, no line breaks, no paragraphs. By the way, for listening reference, if you would like to see it, as we go, I'll be creating a Google Docs spreadsheet with our scores on it, and I will throw a link to that in the description below.
Cool. And with that, first, the completeness bonus doesn't qualify
Yeah,
here.
it doesn't, because, I mean, it's just a one-chapter fic, only about 8,000 words.
This work is nowhere near long enough for that.
No.
So, final scores. What is Jesse's final score?
Jesse's final score is a 93 out of 100.
Wow, Jesse. You gave him a solid A- by former American grading standards.
Yeah, right? Steven, what you got? What's your final score here?
My final score is a 95. And I kind of cheated with my grading to get it there, because that's kind of how I felt about it.
Is that where
at
that
the
38
beginning.
came from?
That is where that 38 came
I
from.
knew it, because if it weren't for that, we'd have the same score.
And then, again, the bad guy here, 76.5 out of 100. This isn't me.
You're a monster.
Well, first off, fuck the American grading system. It's an inaccurate representation of quality.
You should do the French one where you can never get 100% on anything.
So, yeah, you're right. 10 out of 20 is a good score. No, I kind of scored it with the thought that, like, 75, 76, that's good. That's great. Above that is, like, going above and beyond, So I guess, there's a bit of European influence there.
Yeah.
This is... at least in my mind, 76 is not a bad score. That's a good score. I really liked this story. I thought it was well written. It had a few issues here and there. It wasn't anything that absolutely blew me away. But overall, I would recommend it to Dragon Ball fans and fanfiction fans.
And I'd agree. I'd say that's a good a good score. I just found this story to be something that I felt was a good work of excellent writing as far as the internet can get us from random people who we've never met before.
Right.
Do you think we should send this guy a message that we're using his story for this?
Thanks, Drake.
We probably should.
We should at least let him know that we've done this. It would be rude of us to do something like this.
It'd be who of us?
This is a review, right? This is a critical analysis.
This is a review. Go ahead.
It does fall under fair use, but at the same time, it would be rude of us to do something like this without at least letting the author know that we're doing it.
Yeah, let's
do Darke Angelus, if by some weird fucking miracle you are listening, thank you very much for your time. I'm so sorry. This is not a bad score. It's a great score. I'm very much a fan of what you've written here.
We'll probably be listening.
Changing a score to 6 out of 10.
We'll probably send him a thing just to say, hey, we did a thing with your thing.
Well, all that said, if you have opinions different to or similar to us, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Otherwise, thank you very much for joining us on the Unironic Masterpiece Fanfic Theater, and we will see you guys next time.
And we'll cut that. But even before that, now that we're done with the show itself, we also want to know if you've got any ideas for us.
Oh, yeah, no.
If you've got any stories to submit, if you've got anything you want us to review.
For now, we're going to stick with one-shots, right? Preferably, we probably won't be using that completeness bonus for a while.
Right.
We're
I
going
think
to keep
10,000 words or less
Yeah.
is a good indicator.
It's a probably good place to start.
I've got a couple of good ones in mind.
So do
the
I.
other thing that we might consider in the future is long-form works. We may spring on Jesse something that
A chapter at a time.
I assume that's
Right,
what
yeah.
we do.
one chapter at a time, one review at a time, and then just going through chapter by chapter.
And
which
for
would be-
some of those, they'll probably each episode of this would probably be much shorter than, this almost hour-long episode we've got here. It would be easier to do a 20-30 minute little bit on each chapter than it would to do an hour long on each chapter.
Right. So in the
But
meantime-
we know us, and we would probably end up going off on tangents the whole time.
We will, like that isn't what we did.
Yeah.
In the meantime, Nick will cut out the longer tangents about Jesse making baseless accusations of me while Nick gets his dogs outside.
Yeah, that'll be spliced. Maybe throw that up as an extra. Anyway,
The twist is there was a base.
we'll
Pew, 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 pew.
see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Visual gags.